Everyone to stand for a moment of silence, and then ask Councilmember Thompson to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Shall we pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Shall we call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Bradley? Mrs. Butcher Conway?
Here.
Mrs. Singer Erdley?
Here.
Mr. Lesby?
Here.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
Here.
Mr. Showalter?
Here.
Mrs. Tackett?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
We have a quorum for the last meeting in November, and actually the next to last meeting for this entire term of office. So thank you all. Good to be here tonight. First on the agenda, you have each of you should have received a copy of the minutes from our last regularly scheduled meeting of November the 12th. If you'd like to look those over for any possible corrections or additions.
Motion for approval, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. If there are no further questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Each of you also should have received a copy of our latest check register. If you could indicate if you've received that register. Thank you. I want to congratulate Chief Bossy for handing me the public sign-in sheet that is blank this evening.
Wow.
So,
Early
there's no one from the audience to address the council. I don't think that's happened
Not often. That's
for
good.
a number of years, but we'll take it. Under mayor's comments, I've got a couple of comments, and then we've got a very special presentation to do during the mayor's comments. But the only other comments I have, I think both Senator Thayer and our guest would like to hear as well. Of course, the first is simply to congratulate the Scott County football Cardinals for being in the state championship football game this weekend. Senator, we can be in the Christmas parade at 6 o'clock and still make it to Kroger Field by 8 o'clock. So that's the plan anyway. But delighted for them. And also I wanted to mention it's rare when we get to see immediate results from a council decision. Frequently things are a little delayed and it takes a while to see. But South Water Street, since you made it one way and appropriated the money to pave it and stripe it, it's a complete transformation.
Yes, that's great.
The fact that we went from 26 on the street parking spots to 46, big deal for Water Street.
Yep, looks good.
Looks good.
Yeah, it does.
Also, a couple of weeks ago, we had the honor of being joined by representatives from the Kentucky League of Cities to honor one of our state representatives. Tonight, we have a similar honor with Mr. J.D. Cheney here from Kentucky League of Cities to help us honor Senator Damon Thayer.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, and distinguished staff too, Mr. Hartley. I appreciate you all letting us come back again. I told you last time not to get irritated with these presentations at your city council. I think there's a lot of cities that would like to have their legislators get awards for helping city governments that don't get that opportunity. And in Georgetown, we're getting to do that more frequently probably than anywhere else. Tonight, we're here to honor Senator Thayer for his work last session on behalf of city governments. As you all know, our board of directors votes on the Friend of Cities Award recipients. We don't have PACs. We don't have all of the fancy report card systems or give money to legislators. We don't grade them or things of that nature. What our board looks at is the body of work that each legislator does during the session that helps advance the interest of city governments and protects your home rule ability. The legislators selected are those that actually carry water on city issues during the legislative session. I'll say this about Senator Thayer: he has received more of these Friend of Cities awards than any other current legislator. And if you look at his career, he chaired the Senate State and Local Government Committee. He's worked on our behalf for a number of years and through that chairman role, and he carried that forward while he served as Senate Majority Floor Leader, which is something that's important for this community to have someone in that kind of position. I'll also say this about Senator Thayer: we don't always agree on every single issue. The league doesn't always line up precisely, but what you can count on, and that you don't always get in Frankfort, is that you'll know where he stands and why he stands where he stands. And that honesty is valuable as you craft policy and you work through it and you try to find something that's passable. So I always appreciate being told eyeball to eyeball if we do have a disagreement on a policy issue and how we may be able to go about remedying that. But now this last session, we passed 14 initiatives, 14 bills off of our legislative agenda. That's pretty good. I think I would put that up against any other association lobbying in the state of Kentucky, including the Kentucky Chamber, in terms of the initiatives that came off the list. That doesn't happen by accident. You know, we fell short on a couple of the things we wanted to pass. We still have some issues to work through on the pension issues. But those 14 issues, guess who carried every one of those to the Senate floor to be voted on? Senator Thayer. We wouldn't have gotten those 14 agenda items passed without him carrying those bills through the process and calling them for a vote on the floor. Senator Thayer, in fact, has taken a number of issues where he personally said, I'm going to have to vote no, but I understand we have good support. I will still put the bill on the floor for a vote. He's done that on a couple of issues for us. This last session, he helped us pass House Bill 75, which modernized the investment statutes for Kentucky cities. Was an important bill off of our legislative agenda. It would not have made it. He personally ushered it through the committee process. On the last day of the session, it would not have survived the committee without his help on doing that and getting it through the process. Now, the governor ended up vetoing that bill. We didn't have a chance to come back and do overrides, but to Senator Thayer's credit, immediately he said, we'll help you get it done next year, and we'll do it in a way where it's veto proof. And so we appreciate that. He also co-sponsored Senate Bill 98, which helped with some of the alcohol laws, which was a KLC initiative to help enhance the Bourbon Trail in the northern part of the state, and here. It would impact here too with regard to the licensure of event centers. So we appreciate all the work he's done over the years. It's a body, it's a collection of work that's continued. I really respect his reliability and his honesty on issues, even when we don't agree. So thank you for letting us have this venue, and join me in congratulating Senator Damon Thayer for being a 2018 Friend of City Award recipient. Take that.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, please.
First of all, I want to thank the League of Cities for this award. We'll make room for it on the wall in my office in Frankfort, where many of you visit me during session, so you will see it there. Thanks to the Georgetown City Council for allowing this presentation to take place here in my hometown. I have a soft spot for cities. My grandfather was once a small town mayor in the little town I grew up in, and I remember how important it was for him when he led the initiative to bring sewer lines to the little village that I grew up in Michigan. They have villages and townships up there. Way too much government for me. That's why I moved to Kentucky, where we don't have all these different divisions of government. It's been 26 years now since I moved to Kentucky. 26 years ago last week. I've lived in Scott County since 2000, moved into the city in 2014, and it is an honor to serve. I enjoy my working relationship with the League of Cities. They do a great job representing Kentucky cities, and the population of Kentucky is moving more into our micropolitan and metropolitan areas. So the needs, wants, and desires of cities are becoming more and more important, and so it's important that you let not only Representative Pratt, Representative Hart, Representative-elect Maddox, and me know what's important to you, but you also should let JD and Brianna know what's important as well. I am committed to getting that city investments bill passed. I love Governor Bevin, but you just never know what the guy's going to veto. So we're going to make sure that we get it over to him, so if he vetoes it, we still have time to override it during the veto override days. We're not going to leave it till the last day, okay? I promise you that. We've got a good new chairman of the State and Local Government Committee, Will Schroeder, who was very involved in that bill. So something tells me we're going to get that moving pretty fast. There's something else that JD didn't mention that I'm extremely proud of for Georgetown, and that is the governor's announcement a few weeks ago that we are on the verge of letting to contract the final leg of the Northwest 460 bypass. That will be let to contract in December or January, should be under construction in the spring as soon as the asphalt plants get open, and we could see that construction finish up sometime in 2020. And that's something that I've been working on since the first day I was elected back in 2003. So important for traffic issues here in downtown that I know you guys get complaints about all the time. It's important for our school system, for transporting our students to school. It's important for law enforcement, our first responders, fire. It's important for Toyota and all the businesses that are here that support Toyota and the other industries. So that is probably atop my list of accomplishments that I'm most proud of to help this city. So I want to thank JD and Brianna and look forward to working with them. The session gets underway January 8th. It's a 30-day session. We'll go in the first week to confirm our leadership and our committee chairs and start the process of bills moving through. Then we'll take a 3-week recess and then come back for the 26-day sprint to the finish, where we'll be in every non-holiday weekday in February and March, finish up the end of March. I was reelected last week as Senate Majority Floor Leader. There's only one town in Kentucky that can say that their hometown boy has that job. It is something that I'm very grateful for and honored that my caucus selected me to do that for a 4th time. And you know that, like the governor said a few weeks ago, you have a very loud and squeaky wheel advocating on behalf of Georgetown in the state Senate. So it would really mean a lot to me if we could get a picture with the mayor and the city council along with the KLC folks presenting this to me. That would mean a lot. And you know I'll push it out on my social media, Councilman Leslie. Thank you all. By the way, my former colleague, former Senator R.J. Palmer here tonight. It's always good to see someone who you can call him senator for the rest of his life. Senator Palmer, welcome to Georgetown.
Did you? Oh, thank God. We're gonna walk over it.
I'm gonna get this fuzzy.
Yep.
Sorry, hang on, I gotta change lenses. Yeah.
She's the one who does all the work. JD knows it because I reminded him all the time.
Let's see, can we? Yeah, can we squeeze in? Can you, just a little bit. There we go. Okay. Is that good?
I'm good.
Okay, I'm gonna scoot over this way a little bit so I don't get this in the way. Sorry.
over your shoulder.
All right. All right.
Thank you all.
So it's roughly a big crowd.
Hold my beard, don't show it dark. There you go.
Oh, there cameras behind us?
Oh.
I hear that giggle, I know what's
Plug you back in there.
Yes, please.
Our blessed community.
Yes, please, Brad.
Tripped over.
Yes, Charlie Brown.
We didn't want nobody.
No,
Trying to get a
you'll sue
picture.
me. Have an accident report.
Good.
Now, I wish
Thank
I'd
you,
done
ma'am.
something to my hair different.
Yeah, I love
I wanted to blow and go, and I did. Quick and easy.
Knock this all over.
it. The ER was great. The ER was smelling great.
Yeah, it's okay.
Here comes Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus Lane.
But it was $100 because they didn't do it, they didn't stitch her.
Yeah.
Huh?
What'd you say?
It's crazy.
I've lost weight. It's good for me.
I know.
You need a pillow.
I've got one of the, like a bed stuff.
You
And a big
need-
old fat black belt.
You need
I got
cookies.
a big leather.
And you need a souped up sled.
What?
Have you seen Christmas Chronicles yet? You should watch it.
You need cookies.
I need milk.
Should have brought us some. Want to eat them?
Okay, we'll come back to order. Thank you. Under GMWSS, we've got several issues to consider tonight, but item 7A, first reading of an amendment to the sewer ordinance, is a very important discussion, and I want to make sure that I set the stage correctly on this issue, Chase, for us to have the right conversation with the council, because this is an issue of some magnitude. This is an ordinance that the Georgetown Municipal Water and Sewer Service Board of Commissioners has recommended that the council undertake. Andrew and I attended the last Board of Commissioners meeting. I guess that was Wednesday before Thanksgiving, Chase.
Yes, sir. Tuesday.
And several important issues that we were there to discuss with them, and they're both on our agenda tonight. The ordinance that we are proposing is very straightforward. It simply says that if you expect Georgetown Municipal and Water Sewer Service to provide you with sewage service, you have to buy your water from us,
Makes sense.
period. Unless there is a set of circumstances or conditions where Georgetown Municipal Water and Sewer Service cannot provide the water, and then they will issue a certificate saying that they can't. And then that would meet the requirements of this ordinance. We think that this ordinance is overdue and has been needed for some time. There are clearly areas of Scott County that Kentucky American needs to service. There are clearly areas of Georgetown that GMWSS needs to service. And our water company, and we acknowledge that we cannot provide water service for the entire county. We don't have the capacity to do that. But there are service areas that are in dispute or are not well recognized today. I don't want to present this as a conflict situation, Chase, but there are service boundaries that are not well defined at this point. And we think it is essential that we define those boundaries and be about that process now. To that end, Chase has been working with some of Kentucky American's management, engineering staff in discussions trying to determine what that boundary looks like. Those talks were productive. They became less productive. We think they're back on track now, and they'll become more engaged again on helping us define what the service area boundary should be in the area where each utility can provide service. They have the infrastructure capacity to provide service to areas that overlap. And we want to work those out in as best manner as we can. However, this ordinance does have a very specific and immediate application that I want everyone to be aware of. And that is the fact that part of what has made this a more urgent conversation is that the zone change that the council went through the pain of doing on North US 25 across from Stonehenge, the development proposed by the urban group, that development apparently can be served by either Georgetown Municipal Water and Sewer Service or Kentucky American Water Company. They have contacted Kentucky American and asked for their engineering department to proceed with plans for Kentucky American to provide water to the development. And it is my position that if it is my opinion that I want to discuss with the council that if it's going to be in the city of Georgetown and this council is going to go through the pain of the zone change and we're going to provide urban services to the property, police, fire, and other, and we're going to treat the sewage, I intend to sell them the water. This ordinance directs the water company not to provide sewer service to someone they don't sell water to unless they can provide a certificate saying that GMWSS cannot do that. This is the tool that we've needed for some time. This is the tool I believe that Chase needs for these conversations. And we're happy to discuss through that. There can be what-if considerations here. Andrew will explain to you that in every area there is a dominant, what's considered a dominant utility. For example, if we annex an area that another utility already serves, they get to continue to serve it. In this particular area, there are water lines from both utilities very close by this property, but Kentucky American has the designation of the dominant utility there. There's a scenario where they could not develop the property. If we refuse to provide sewer service, unless we get the water business, and Kentucky American refuses to sign over that dominant utility right, I think this has been coming for a long time. I think it's an essential tool for Chase and the Water Board to have, and it comes with their recommendation.
Would there have been another situation, that one's a good active example to give us. Would there have been another, like out on my end of the territory, it's all Kentucky American Water now, like Rocky Creek. So if they were to develop another piece of property that's out there, you wouldn't go after that if you had Kentucky American on 3 or 4. Why this one in particular that we're using for example is because it's adjacent to
it can be served by both, and it's in what is I won't say is a legally established boundary, but what I will say is the traditional service boundary for water for Georgetown Municipal, which is, again, traditionally been within the city and west of I-75.
Okay, and it's that corridor, that east of I-75, actually, I think the water, Kentucky American comes right up Horseshoe Drive, so it's that section on out will never be Georgetown water. Well, let me ask just one other question just popped in my head when the mayor was talking. Some of these summers when we've had drought conditions, by saying, okay, we're going to take you in because we can, does that hurt when we were having a drought?
When our capacity is served by Royal Springs Aquifer, and we only can produce the water that spring gives us, and the demand, when we see that in the summer months when the spring is down, that's just more money that we have to buy water from Frankfurt Plant Board or Kentucky American, and that's just the nature of our business where we are and with our source. Okay. So as we develop our system and take on new water customers, that will in turn be more water that we purchase from Frankfurt Plant Board and Kentucky American in low flow conditions.
Which, of course, I know the inner workings, but I don't know the dollar amount. That's knowing that you do have to buy water outside of Royal Springs. Are we making the money on the sewer? Are we making the money on the water? And if we were to keep the sewer and give up the water, are we dollars ahead or behind? I mean, what's the dollar amount when you talk about sewer versus water?
We definitely, when we have to buy water from Frankfurt Plant Board and from Kentucky American, we definitely lose money. We make less, and if we buy from Kentucky American specifically, we lose money for every gallon we buy. Our rate structure is based on both, and Alan can step in. I mean, our budget is based on water and sewer rates and water and sewer customers.
So do you make?
And within our budget, we do budget for purchasing some water from Frankfurt.
Yeah, you do.
Every month.
Okay, but are you making the water? I know there's a break-even point. There's a point that you make money. Is it the sewer that you're making money off of? If you just took everybody that's on sewer versus everybody that's on water, are you making money off of the water? Or are you making money off the sewer?
Both.
Which one's stronger? And if you,
they're both right now. They're both weighed the same.
Okay.
During drought months, we're going to make a little bit more on sewer than water because we're purchasing more from an outside source.
Okay.
The more we purchase from Frankfurt, the better it is on our bottom line. We're not losing as much money. And we rarely buy from Kentucky American. They're emergency only.
Okay.
So that's only if Frankfurt can't supply it, or if we have a line break in a certain, on the east side where we have to buy from them.
So drought season, even if we add 2,000 more homes into the community, that we would maybe not have to service them with water, you're still saying you're able to handle it during a drought season.
Yes, ma'am.
You're still financially able to handle it.
Yes, ma'am.
As well as.
So we're still making a little bit, but not as much as we normally would make.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Chase, quick question for you. If someone has I guess we're talking about if both are in the area, and Kentucky American is literally on their property, and we're not quite on their property, but we want to be able to provide that water service to that customer. I guess it's a concern I think we need to talk about so I can understand it, I guess. But would it be fair to that developer to require them to pay us to bring the Georgetown water line onto their property when Kentucky American is already perhaps on that line?
I think that's where what the city attorney was saying, just that establishing that dominant utility who's closer, who can best serve each property. And it's not a thing that we're wanting or we can serve everyone. And as you just said, there's going to be instances where it's just better that all around that Kentucky American provides service. What we're aiming to do here is more so just giving us, as the mayor said, a tool that we can better negotiate with and bring to the table, and just establishing, let's sit down with Kentucky American and let's say let's create an equitable deal, a fair deal of who's going to service what, because we don't want to be spending the time. We don't have the time and the energy to be going back and forth on every single property. But as you, back to your question, no, I don't think it would be fair to the developer to say they need to pay us to expand our system to that property when Kentucky American's right there.
Right. I mean, in general, I like the idea of the ordinance, but I don't want to create a hardship to where a business might not even be justifiable if they had to pay, I don't know, $50,000 or $100,000 or $200,000 just to have our service because we have this ordinance in place.
And I think that's, as we said, we would provide the certificate saying, that first right of refusal, saying we don't have capacity, we don't have the infrastructure to serve you. You need to seek your water service elsewhere.
If the discussions armed with this tool, if Chase can get to a degree of specific nature with Kentucky American, that they sign off on and maybe comes back to your board and ultimately the council, where we adopt some service boundary understanding so that we can make better long-term planning decisions, and we don't have the potential for these case-by-case disputes. I think is uncomfortable, and I think it puts the developer in an uncomfortable spot. That's not our intention here.
Yeah.
It's to give us a better tool to get this settled once and for all.
Okay. I just don't want to create a hardship for not so much the developer, I mean, but the small business guy or whoever the case might be that needs the service, and perhaps it costs something more to get it from Georgetown than it does from Kentucky American. I just don't want to.
And we don't want the opposite either, David. We're scratching our head here because our residential rates are significantly cheaper than Kentucky American's residential rates. Why does this developer want their customers to pay higher water rates than they can through GMWSS?
Yeah.
And I'll say better service.
None of this
as well.
makes sense.
Have they said? I mean, you're right. I mean, these guys are.
They were made aware of the concerns. Kentucky American made them aware of the concerns that we had addressed about providing them sewage. They did not contact us. Their response was to give Kentucky American's engineering department instructions to go ahead and design their property. Our response was to put this on the agenda for our discussion tonight.
How close is our water line to this piece of property? Is it fairly close?
It's right there.
Right there? And
It can be, this property in particular can be serviced by Kentucky American or Georgetown Municipal, feasibly by both.
Okay.
This isn't the instance that you said where we're asking them to expand, to build our infrastructure that they don't need to.
Right.
This is not that case.
Okay.
Are the schools on Georgetown water?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's the closest infrastructure. in
That's
fact,
what I would
right there.
figure.
And
So
the school, I'm
This doesn't require, obviously, a vote tonight.
Right.
But it's a significant action.
Yeah.
And even though we don't vote on first reading, I wanted to make sure that you all understood everything that we were talking about. Even though it's one of the simplest ordinances you'll ever consider, in its wording, it's got real impact.
Yeah. So I haven't read it all, but I guess I'll ask Andrew or Chase. I mean, is there anything that's in there, or is there anything that should be in there that says that we're not going to create a financial hardship that to a business owner or developer?
Yes, sir.
There's nothing in there that says that. Should there be something in there that says that, if there is a cost above and beyond what it would be for Kentucky American, that we would give them the latitude to go elsewhere?
I think that the state law already anticipates that, because what the state law says is not only in areas that are already served by an existing utility, but new annexed areas that are closer to existing municipal or existing non-municipal utilities, that existing utility has the right to serve a property. So it kind of creates the presumption that the utility that is closest in proximity to that property has the right to serve it. So, but in doing so, you would think that it would also cost the least amount of money to run utility infrastructure. If the private person is responsible for putting in all those pipes, they're gonna have to take the shortest path.
Yeah.
I think the issue here is you got gray areas. What do you do when there's a square piece of property, and literally along the north border of a property within 100 feet is one utility, and along the south border within 100 feet is another utility? Who gets it, and who gets how much? And is it fair for the question that the water board asked is it fair for us to serve that property with sewer if they have a choice of using us for water and choose not to? That is a policy and a business decision, but it is one that the board essentially asked us to consider.
A lot of it is, after you work through it, David, it's just real common sense. And again, if we can set some boundaries and not have to do this exercise all the time, we'll be better off than us litigating this ordinance all the time. That's not what I want to bring to you.
Yeah. So this will initiate another meeting, I guess, between you and Kentucky American?
The mayor said, I've reached out earlier this fall, because this is not the first development that this has taken place just since I've started, and said, it's going to benefit both Georgetown Municipal and Kentucky American if we just identify a boundary, then we don't have to go back and forth each time.
Yeah.
And initially, they were eager to sit down and talk, then they went silent,
Yeah.
and now they're willing to talk again.
Well,
So
this certainly gives you the leverage.
This definitely gives us some leverage, and again, this isn't a thing where Georgetown Municipal is wanting to be greedy.
I understand.
We're wanting to expand as much as we can. We can't do that. It's just a thing we do want to protect.
I get it. My biggest concern was putting somebody in a financial hardship when they might be able to have access to a water source at no additional cost.
Right. And I don't think that's the intent. That won't be my intent of saying, no, you're going to extend our system when it's right there from another provider.
Okay. But shouldn't that be in the ordinance somewhere, Andrew? I'm asking.
Like I said, I think that
Chase,
I think that policy is embodied in the state law, but
I'm not pushing. I'm just asking. I just want to, it's a big deal, and we get a good chance here to talk about it, so I just want to understand. And maybe you all can think about it over the next couple weeks, and if you think that it's...
The other thing, David, so that everybody could be on the same page, I've made sure Kentucky American is aware of all of these conversations, all the way up to and including their president. So, and they knew that our response to the request for their engineering to go ahead with this development out here, they knew that we were going to have first reading of this ordinance tonight.
Okay.
So we cannot be more forthright than what we've been with Kentucky American about what we intend to do.
Sure.
Good. Shall we read the summary?
An ordinance creating a new section of Georgetown Code of Ordinances, Chapter 19, Article 3, regarding the provision of sewer services by GMWSS. Summary. 1. Creates a new section of Chapter 19, Article 3 of the Georgetown Code of Ordinances prohibiting GMWSS from providing a sanitary sewer service to new subdivisions and developments unless the subdivision or development also uses GMWSS water service, unless GMWSS water service is unavailable. 2. Provides for repeal of inconsistent ordinances, severability of provisions, and an effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324. Introduced and publicly read for the first time November 26, 2018.
Thank you. Next, under GMWSS, Chase, y'all were going to suggest a refinancing?
Yes, sir. We have a refinancing of a outstanding bond, 2007, and we have Senator Palmer here that from Compass and suggested our new rate and why we're wishing to do this refinancing.
Chase. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Chase gave the nice, simple explanation. That is what it entails. It is refinancing the 2007 issue. We're not changing the structure. We're simply reducing the interest rate for a savings of approximately $132,000 to the utility.
This came about from our evaluation of all the city debt. And none of our debt was eligible to be refinanced, but we did find this issue from the water company. And a very simple transaction. All the terms are left in place, but the interest rate is simply reduced to a savings of about $132,000.
After all fees, term is the same and approved by our board of directors last week.
That's correct.
Sound like a first reading.
Yeah. Sounds like a first reading. Would you please?
So there are actually two ordinances. You want to explain the?
Yes. There's one ordinance that is simply for the refinancing. The second ordinance is an amendment to your general bond ordinance that governs all your outstanding indebtedness for the utility. And initially, it's a number of years old. It required that you had to provide a debt service reserve and fund it with cash. There have been some changes in that particular part of the marketplace where there are the availability of surety bonds now that can be purchased for about 10% of that cash value. So the utility doesn't have to set aside such an exorbitant amount of cash that it can't be used or touched until the bonds are paid off. This simply gives you the option to use either or, depending on what may work best. And knowing that you have a significant potential project in the future that would require a significant cash debt service reserve, we thought this would be nice to update your general bond ordinance to give you some flexibility.
Can I ask a quick question, Mayor? We've worked with RJ in the past. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you.
I may have missed some of the terms. Can you share with us what those terms of the new loan would be?
Sure. The existing bond is scheduled to mature in 2027. It is currently at a rate of 4.23%. The new bond will mature again in 2027 at an estimated rate of 3.12% fixed for the entire term.
Big savings.
That's good.
All right.
Series A bond ordinance authorizing the issuance of $3,612,000 principal amount of water and sewer revenue refunding bonds, 2018 Series A, which amount may be increased or decreased by up to $360,000 of the City of Georgetown, Kentucky, designating the paying agent and registrar in respect thereof, approving the preparation of preliminary and final official statements in respect thereof, providing for the sale of such bonds to the lowest and best bidder, and authorizing the execution of documents on behalf of the city. This ordinance authorizes the issuance of revenue bonds by the City of Georgetown, Kentucky, the city, in an aggregate principal amount of approximately $450,000. The bonds to provide monies to refund its obligations under an assistance agreement dated as of January 30th, 2007, between the city and Kentucky Rural Water Finance Corporation, which was originally entered into to pay the cost of the construction of additions and improvements to the city's combined and consolidated water and sanitary sewer systems, to fund the reserve account, and to pay the cost of issuing the 2018 Series A bonds. Related to the bonds, the ordinance also approves 1, a preliminary and final official statement, 2, official terms and conditions of the sale, 3, a continuing disclosure agreement, and 4, procedures regarding continuing disclosure undertakings. The bonds are to be sold at an advertised public sale in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 424 of the Kentucky Revised Statute, or by the solicitation of proposals as required by law. The bonds are to bear interest payable at such rates and on the interest payment dates as shall be established upon the sale. The city clerk of the city of Georgetown, Kentucky hereby certifies that the above summary is true and correct and written in a way calculated to inform the public of its content. Reference is made to the full text of the ordinance, which may be reviewed at the office of the city clerk, Georgetown, Kentucky, in the Georgetown City Hall, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, for a complete statement of its provisions and terms.
Thank you. That will be first reading of the first ordinance.
General Bond Ordinance of the City of Georgetown, Kentucky, providing for the establishment of rules, regulations, and conditions for the issuance from time to time by said City of Water and Sewer revenue bonds, and providing for the collection, segregation, and distribution of the revenues of the combined and consolidated water and sewer system. This is a combined and consolidated water and sewer system revenue bond ordinance setting forth general rules, regulations, and conditions for the issuance of utility revenue bonds by the City of Georgetown, Kentucky. Provisions are made for the authorization and issuance of water and sewer system revenue bonds in a series upon adoption of a series bonds ordinance. For the application of the proceeds of each series, for the establishment of a bonds proceed funds, a revenue fund, a bond fund, a reserve account within the bond fund, an operation maintenance fund, and a depreciation fund, for certain covenants of the city with respect to its utility revenue bonds, and for defaults, remedies with respect to such bonds. Such bonds, when issued, will not constitute an indebtedness of the city within the meaning of any constitutional statutory provisions or limitations, but are payable solely from the revenues of the combined and consolidated water and sewer system of the City of Georgetown, Kentucky, to be operated by the Georgetown Board of Water and Sanitary Sewer Commissioners. References hereby made to the full text of the ordinance for a complete statement of its provisions and terms. The city clerk of the City of Georgetown, Kentucky hereby certifies that the above summary is true and correct and written in a way calculated to inform the public its content. Reference is made to the full text of the ordinance, which may be reviewed at the office of the city clerk, Georgetown, Kentucky, in the Georgetown City Hall, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, for a complete statement of its provisions and terms.
Thank you. That'll constitute first reading of this ordinance. And again,
Thank you,
second
Mayor,
reading
and
of
members of the council.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let's see, Chase, while you're at the podium,
Sir?
we may just let you stand up there a while.
Yes, sir.
When I look down the rest of the agenda. Item C under the Municipal Water and Sewer Service, Chase, is a contract with Bluegrass Engineering.
2 purchase orders for C&D, Mayor. First, as Senator Thayer said, the expansion of the Northwest Bypass, we have a water line that needs to be relocated. So KYTC is directly negotiated with Bluegrass Engineering, who's a consultant we do a lot of work with for redesign of that water line to move it out of the way. That purchase order is for $23,576.38, and that is just a direct pass-through to KYTC.
Motion there.
I'll second.
Thank you. There are no questions. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chase kind of got on to grouping those purchase orders pretty quickly. didn't he?
Smooth.
Smooth that way. Okay.
Second purchase order is a design fee adjustment on our distribution, our new operations building adjacent to our office. And that is, again, with design firm Bluegrass Engineering, in the amount of $49,257.50. Again, that is a design fee adjustment. I can answer any questions you have on that.
I'll make a motion for you.
Motion's been made
Second.
and second. There are no questions for Chase. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I watch that every day when I drive.
I do too.
It's hard to see a lot of progress if you look
No,
at it every day,
I'm seeing it.
I see a lot.
but it's coming along.
I had not heard as much jackhammering as we heard before, so.
Yes, ma'am.
That was,
Well, there was a little of that at the front end of the
it's
project.
intense.
A little
at the
bit.
beginning.
Next on the agenda, actually could have been under number 7, but we styled it as item 8 completely by itself. Really pleased to be at this point of the council's discussion of the South Sewer Line and the solution that we've been evaluating for several years now about how to really get this issue solved at the trailer parks. We had given you an outline on how the funding for the trailer park portion of this project would work, so that we had a general understanding. And council then hired Hazen and Sawyer engineers to look at all the technical implications of this project, and give us a set of recommendations for exactly how the project should meet our needs. The council kind of drew a line in the sand several years ago and said that this environmental issue must be addressed. And we also determined that we think there's a humanitarian crisis out there as well. So the solution that you'll see, the presentation that you'll see is very detailed. We've been through it now a couple of times, and it comes to you after being considered by the Water Board and unanimously recommended forward to the council. You'll see a presentation about what was studied. There were 9 possible recommendations that were evaluated, and tonight you will hear the final preferred recommendation to the City Council on how we take the project forward with design. What has been fascinating about this project is looking at it with new eyes and sometimes with a 30,000-foot perspective to look at how we solve, how we improve sewage capacity in this area. So what started as a very specific look at only the trailer park has changed a little bit at the end of our evaluation, because there is such potential to make certain improvements to our system that we think putting the two together will make a lot of sense after we walk through the presentation. And in particular, given that some of the funding that we've talked with the council about as being essential to the project, the 30-year financing at 0.5% interest rate. We'll see during this presentation that funding is available not only for the trailer park portion of the project, but for a part of the project that might improve GMWSS's system as well. So with that introduction, I'd like we challenged Chase when he first came on board to put together the best possible team that he could to address the South Sewer issue. And he and his team have put together this presentation, and I'll sit back and do my best just to watch now, Chase, and let you and John and Kurt.
Thank you, Mayor. So on behalf of Georgetown Municipal and the design team with Hazen and Sawyer, we're very pleased to be here tonight to give you an update on the progress we've made over the last 4 or 5 months. As the mayor said, he's seen this presentation a number of times now, and our board saw that last week and again voted unanimously on the design path that we would like to take moving forward. And then just starting out, I'd like to say that the progress we've made has been in part, large part, because of what I'll say is just a model for interagency, public agency cooperation, because City of Georgetown, Scott County Fiscal Court, LFUCG, Georgetown Municipal, Health Department, Bluegrass Area Development District, and Division of Water, the list goes on, have all in the last 4 or 5 months really come together and push this project forward to where we have it today. We're very pleased with that effort. So agenda for tonight, just what we want to talk about first is how did we get to where we are today, just the background. I'm the newcomer to this project as it's been around discussed for many years, and just talk about a quick review of how we've gotten to the point we are tonight. Discuss the goals of the project, the desired outcomes, and the challenges that are going to be, what are the roadblocks for us achieving those goals. We're going to have a long talk about the project funding and why right now is the time to act. We're not going to see a more financially friendly time to opportunity to solve this problem that we're talking about. discuss the engineering, what we've done so far and what we need to do this winter with Hazen and Sawyer. And then going to turn the project over to John Schubarth and Kurt Zender with Hazen, and they're going to run you through the evaluation, the alternatives analysis that Hazen as well as Georgetown Municipal has gone through to come up with the best plan for attacking this sewer problem. We're going to talk about what those different alternatives are going to cost, some key project schedule, some key dates, and ultimately what's the recommendation to the council on how we move forward, what are our next steps. First, we've got Spindletop Mobile Home Park as well as Ponderosa Mobile Home Park, otherwise known as Georgetown Mobile Estates, the south part of the county along US 25, and you'll see in black there the Scott County, Fayette County line, and you'll notice that part of the Ponderosa Mobile Home Park is in Fayette County. That's why LFUCG is involved financially. You'll also see the location of two failing privately owned packaged wastewater treatment plants that serve the mobile home parks. The mobile home parks, again, two private package plants. The smaller one here in the top right, that treatment plant, that package plant is providing no treatment at this point. Water just flows through it and then discharges. The larger plant in the top left, it's providing, we don't know currently the level of treatment that it's providing, but it's very little. And these plants both discharge to a tributary of Cane Run. Cane Run, as we know, runs adjacent to the Royal Springs Aquifer recharge area. And the Royal Springs Aquifer is our main source of drinking water for Georgetown and parts of Scott County. To date, regulatory agencies, Division of Water and the Health Department, they have issued notices of violations to the owners of the mobile home park that own and operate these plants. That has been the extent of their arm of enforcement for these discharges. Any greater action would ultimately involve a threat of shutting down the treatment plants and then shutting down the mobile home parks, displacing over 2,000 residents. That is why this problem is at your feet, at the utilities' feet. That is why we have to be the ones to figure out a solution. I don't think there's anybody else that can at this point. Looking at the project, the minimum project that we can look at to solve this infrastructure issue involves two components, and that's what Hazen and Sawyer have been brought on board to look at. First is a new collection system within the mobile home parks. The existing infrastructure is not salvageable. It's been inspected. It's not worth fixing. It's not worth rehabbing. We need to install approximately 16,000 linear feet of new gravity sanitary sewer and sewer services from the main line to the mobile home units. That will all be part of the collector sewer to get the wastewater into the system. Once we've collected that sewage, we need to transport it to a location within our existing system that can handle that new flow. That is where you get into the interceptor improvement. That conveyance of that wastewater, that's going to involve gravity sewer as well as a pump station and force main. That'll all be in the corridor of US 25. Project goals, we need to meet the minimum requirements that I just discussed. We have to do that to get the funding that the city has obtained. We need to collect that wastewater and transport it to a place in our collection system. We need to eliminate the discharges, the raw sewage and unpermitted discharges into the tributary of Cane Run. And ultimately, what I think is most important, we've got to protect our only drinking water supply. A long-standing priority of the administration is obviously to protect the Greenbelt. We don't want US 25 turning into Nicholasville Road between Nicholasville and Lexington. With this project, if we're putting sewer infrastructure in that area, that is an issue. We also, which I believe we've done, is leverage funding opportunities to make this as financially feasible as possible. The mayor's office, the mayor, and the city attorney have done an excellent job of that. You'll see that in a minute. Challenges, again, can we get enough funding to make this financially feasible for the city, for the owners of the mobile home park, and for the utility? How do we look, as I said, preserving the green belt, how do we look at sizing this infrastructure? Do we size it only for the new flow at the mobile home park as one minimum size? Or do we look at the other end of the spectrum, the other bookend, and say we're going to size this infrastructure for ultimate build out of the sewer shed, which would be for ultimate build out of the green belt? Or do we want to chart some course in the middle? I think with this project, as it moves forward, we're at the utility as well as the council is going to face a public perception issue that we're using public money to benefit a private business enterprise. That's a difficult discussion that we have to have. I can assure you that we are not doing that. The mobile home park is going to pay their share, and that's going to be defined in the user agreement. It's our last point. And that's probably the biggest challenge, and that rests on the mayor and the city attorney's shoulders, with us helping them in any way we can. But we have to negotiate and execute a user agreement that the mayor spoke about previously with the owners of the mobile home park. That user agreement has to protect the city and the utility. Whether we can get them to sign off on that, that's probably the biggest challenge in my opinion. Project funding. We've received pledges from the City of Georgetown, Scott County Fiscal Court, as well as LFUCG. We've also, the city attorneys obtained 2 grants for this project. The lion's share of the funding will come from a Kentucky Infrastructure Authority low-interest loan. And that loan is in the amount of $4.5 million at an interest rate of 0.5%. At a term of 30 years, and KIA is going to give us $1 million in principal forgiveness. We spoke to Senator Palmer. He said that he cannot match that rate. So we've also been informed just recently by KIA if we think that it's going to be more expensive than what it was originally estimated at, they're willing to increase that loan amount of $4.5 million at the same rate at the same term. So with those funding sources, we have a little over $7 million to work with on this project. And again, I don't know that there is an expiration date on part of this funding. That's why I'm saying that we need to think hard about moving forward with this project now, so we don't lose any of that funding. Jumping on to our project engineering. Back in July, August, the city, through qualification-based selection, selected Hazen and Sawyer to be the design engineer on this project. We have been through the preliminary design study, and the findings of that study were documented in a technical memorandum and submitted to the mayor's office last week. That technical memorandum has also been forwarded on to the owners of the mobile home park for their review. In that study, which John is going to go through in just a minute, we looked at 9 different alternatives on how we can solve this problem through design and construction. We looked at site assessment. We looked at the cost of the different alternatives. And finally, they helped us out with some of the funding support services. As he runs through those alternatives for you tonight, they have a recommendation on which way we need to go on this project. And again, our administrative board voted unanimously to back the recommended alternative. So we hope to bring a contract with your all's approval on the alternative. We hope to move forward with a final design with Hazen and Sawyer very near future. Final design contract including the detailed design, the permitting, easement acquisition, and services during construction, such as the administration and the construction inspection. Before I turn it over to John, as he's going to get into the technical part, just go through a few basic sewer concepts. This is how our sewer system is operated and how it's constructed in just its most basic terms. If this is elementary, I apologize. Just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page before John gets going. Two types of sewers. There's gravity sewer, and then there's pump station and force main. That's how our entire system is operated. Gravity sewer is just that. It flows, wastewater flows downhill at a constant grade through a pipe. The gravity is the force that moves the water from point A to point B. Gravity is our friend. It is low maintenance after its initial construction. We do need to clean it on a preventative maintenance schedule, and we occasionally have to fix a blockage or a structural failure, but after construction, for all practical purposes, it's low maintenance. Next, when topography is not favorable for gravity sewer, we have to put in a pump station and a force main. The pump station applies energy to the system through electricity on a pump, and it forces the water through the pipe over a hill to where we need to get it to go. Georgetown Municipal has 59 pump stations in our system. We have to be operating to reduce that number. We have 8 staff dedicated. In addition to all the lines, the sewer lines, 8 staff have to inspect and operate and maintain those 59 pump stations. Pump stations also come with a infinite cost associated with electricity, the maintenance, the mowing, every part of it. It's a maintenance that goes on forever. So again, gravity is our friend. Pump station and force main, not our friend. With that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to John Schubarth with Hazen and Sawyer and Kurt Zender, and they're going to take you through our preliminary engineering study.
What do I do here?
Thank you, Chase. And John, just wanted to reassure the council, I meant to say this earlier, you're not going to be asked to make any decisions tonight. We're not going to ask you to approve a contract, or so this is, hopefully, the conclusions will be as obvious to you all as they've been to those of us who have been through the presentation, but we're not going to ask you to spend money tonight. Please, John.
And definitely, as I get into this, stop me with questions. Chase says I talk way too fast, so tell me to slow down, John. You're talking too fast. So do that as well. What we did, and again, we looked at this from an alternative evaluation standpoint. We said, okay, the easy answer is let's go out and do what the project profile says, what Chase said to begin with. Let's go out there, let's build a pump station, let's build the lines, let's pump it to town. And then as we started looking at it, said, okay, where exactly are we going to connect it to town? What are some other things we're going to look at? So we first have just some evaluation criteria. And we say, okay, we got to make sure that whatever we choose, does it meet the project goals? And those are the project goals that Chase mentioned in his part of the presentation. What is the life cycle or the total cost of ownership of that facility with the upfront capital cost as well as the ongoing operation and maintenance of whatever we decide to build, as Chase talked about with pump stations. Constructability, can we construct it easily? Is it constructible at all? Operability, does it fit in with the rest of how Georgetown operates the collection systems, their pump stations and everything? And then will it accommodate, and I should have put quotes around it, approved growth. Just, we looked at this, said, well, we can't just build this just thinking about getting them in, but well, how can we make a better project for the entire county, for the entire city? So we started off. Well, we met with the project team early on. We had 7 different alternatives. We thought, okay, we're going to have a whole bunch. We're going to go in there. We're going to just lay a whole bunch out for these guys, the whole project team to take a look at. We came in there with 7. They immediately crossed out 2 of them, said these won't work, but then they added 2 more. So at the end of the day, we started off with 9 different alternatives. As Chase talked about, gravity line versus pump station versus force main. Some were very short gravity lines with a small pump station and a long force main. Others were long gravity lines, a little bit bigger pump station and a shorter force main, or anything in between. Then we have, well, discharge into this part of the collection system and get it to the wastewater treatment plant, or discharge to another part of the collection system. So we looked at all those different things, and we quickly got it down, not as quickly as I just did, pretty quickly got it down to 3 different alternatives. And I'm going to go, that's kind of spend the rest of our presentation talking about these 3 particular alternatives. We said these are viable, these all meet the objectives of what we're doing, so we'll walk through all these with the cost, okay? So the first one, just alternative number 1, we call this our base option. And basically what, I don't know if this will work on here, but we have the area in orange that's shown here. We said, okay, we're going to look at this area, and that's the only area we're going to serve with this option.
So what we did, we started off looking, and I'll do this for all three alternatives. We'll look at the area we're gonna serve, then we're gonna look at how much flow is brought in from that area, sewage flow, and then we'll look at what infrastructure would need to then convey that flow and connect us to the water company system. So again, we have this orange area. This is a trailer park out here. There's, I think, 10 or 12 different existing commercial entities on septic that we committed that we would make as part of this project. So they're also there as well. So what you have in the first column here, you have the mobile home park, and then you have the other commercial entities along Lexington Road there. And there's about 190,000 gallons of sewage that we expect to see from this base area. So, but what we do, when Chase talked a little bit about sizing facilities, we use what's called a peaking factor. And for all these alternatives, we used a peaking factor of 4. So again, the average day would be, everything's perfect, and we're gonna get 190,000 gallons at a consistent flow rate throughout the whole day. Well, that never happens. We have what's called diurnal flows, where early in the morning, everybody's up, doing laundry, doing what they're doing, showering, flows go up, then during the day they're at work, flows go down, and then they come home from work, and flows go back up during the evening as they're cooking supper and taking showers and baths with the kids. So that's really how we size everything. I just put it up there. So you can see, this is our average flow that we expect out of that area. This is the peak flow for which we then size the gravity sewers, the pump stations, of course, make that kind of thing. Yes, sir.
Are you all anticipating new trailers brought into that, or just all the trailers going in that park for new customers?
There are approximately right at 500 trailers that are in that trailer park now. We're not expecting them to develop any additional trailer units.
Okay.
Did I say that? My understanding.
That's mostly correct. And we've really looked at these maps carefully over the last week to make sure of what we were looking at and what we were saying. Without expanding the footprint of what is developed today, there are 500 units possible in the 2 trailer parks. Today, there's closer to 300 units on site. But when you look at the aerial photograph closely, there's big gaps in between the trailers. And in fact, I think some of the existing trailers out there may just be hulks, abandoned hulks that look like they could be 30 or years or older. But we've actually tasked Andrew with pulling up those maps, and let's count the spots within the footprint that we know as the parks today, so that we could put that approximate 500 number on there and know that that's what we're going to be building.
But that 500 number is what we used for this calculation for the average AMP. To answer that.
Thank you.
Okay. Then the infrastructure required, and this is very simple. We got the area out here that we're going to serve. What we looked at was just an interceptor sewer, a gravity sewer, which is the green line, which would flow to a point along US 25, where a pump station would go in. It would then have a force main going up US 25, Lexington Road, around the bypass to an existing Georgetown pump station, which is the Bradford pump station number 1. How this would be sized, again, at that flow is 550 gallon a minute. That's the peak flow that we would see out of this area in orange. We would have a force main back to Bradford. At Bradford, unfortunately, doesn't have the capacity to handle the 550 gallon a minute, and that's everywhere we looked in the system. We couldn't put it anywhere in the system where there was, oh yeah, we got tons of capacity sitting here, just discharge it here. It was never the case. So we looked at that and said, okay, we're gonna have to do some upgrades to Bradford pump station number 1, so that's included as well. Again, with this alternative, we've got the gravity, all of the on-site sewers. Chase talked about 16,000 linear feet of collector sewers to serve all the mobile home park. The 1 interceptor that comes up to a strategic location here, and that'll be more important as I get on to the next alternative, force main and upgrade of the Bradford pump station to get it into the system. Any questions on any of that? Okay. What are some of the pros and cons? Obviously, the good things about this alternative, it meets the minimum project requirements, obviously because the only thing we're serving is that area out there. It has the lowest initial capital cost, and it has the lowest total cost of ownership for the project out of the 3 alternatives. And I'll present costs here when I get done presenting all 3. Some of the drawbacks, it provides no capacity for approved growth within the system. It conveys the sewage through multiple pump stations. We're pumping it, sending it to another pump station, pumping it again, and we're just through series of pump stations bring it in, which in turn leads to higher O&M costs for the utility in perpetuity. It adds additional pump station for them to maintain. Chase mentioned 59, this would be number 60, that they need to maintain forever. The pump station is also located in close proximity to the aquifer recharge area. And what we're trying to do is, and what can we do to better protect that water supply, and we'll talk about that and some of the other alternatives. It is also a highly visible pump station. What I should have done, and I'll do it here, is we brought up here in this green area you see on the map, that is really the green belt. Green belt, I guess, technically would go from that area down to the county line. But that area is right there. So anything north of there is kind of, okay, that's where we would allow approved development for the Georgetown system. Anything in the green area and south of there is saying, okay, we're going to get away from that, okay?
This picture, this image was a revelation for me. Hopefully it's helpful for council. What John's pointed out are the parcels that make up the Greenbelt ring. Of course, everything south of that green ring would be Greenbelt. But it's important to notice that we have significant areas inside of the bypass, at the very top right of this picture, that we cannot provide sewer service for. We have significant acreage north of the green belt, which is in our comprehensive plan for development, that we cannot provide sewer service for today. We are effectively out of business in those areas. And what you'll see as this presentation goes along is that GMWSS has done what Georgetown and other municipalities have done. We've grown incrementally. You grow incrementally. And when we grow development by development, we grow by putting on pump stations. And we grow incrementally. It makes the most sense financially in the short term, until we get to the point where, because we're limited to existing pump station capacities, we don't have any flow. What you'll begin to see in this presentation is how we free up some of our own system and get out of our own way so that we can provide sewer service to areas that are in our growth projected area.
Now, can I ask a follow-up question for that then? On the next slide, the very first con, provides no capacity for approved growth. That's what you're just talking about then within the city limits.
Emphasis on approved growth. This is not projected future what-if growth. This is growth that's approved today, that Chase has got applications for that he can't service. We didn't want that line to scare people. That is not hypothetical growth. That is growth that is on the table.
And that line will make more sense as we start talking about some of these other alternatives. So alternative number 2 then, we basically have the same pump station, the same location, but we add in a bunch more flows. As the mayor talked about, we added in this area up here that's highlighted in blue. So we've got some areas up here which are currently served by Georgetown sewer system, some areas up here that are currently unserved and incapable of being served. As we got into this and working with Chase and his staff, this area up here, I call it kind of the southeast part of the collection system. They have several pump stations down here. They all pump in and eventually get to the sewer plant. There's no capacity there. It's all at capacity. We can't do any more development in this area and continue to send flow through that part of the system. There's just nowhere for it to go. It's going to come out on the ground eventually. So what we said is, let's look at the flows that we could get from here, and that's what I'm showing here. I'll get into the project itself in a minute, or the alternative in a minute. And with this area, looking at this area, just in blue and in orange, I count for the trailer park and then the area south here on US 25, there's 1 million gallons of flow for a peak flow of 4 million gallons. Now again, those aren't new flows. A lot of that is existing flows that we're proposing to bring down a different direction. And that is, again, this alternative, to define it better, would be, again, the collector sewers within the mobile home park, the same interceptor coming up to this strategically located pump station. But what we have here is this pump station is located, it'd be in this vicinity somewhere, basically, but there's a draw which comes up this way. You kind of see it on the map itself, which a future interceptor could be constructed. If that future interceptor would be constructed, again, not to develop this area, but only to alleviate the flows here through that interceptor down to this pump station. That would take two pump stations offline immediately, freeing up capacity here, as well as freeing up capacity in that interceptor for these properties the mayor talked about that cannot currently be developed. So what it is, we got, again, the infrastructure that's down here. We have a much larger pump station, initially starting off with the 550 gallon minute, meet the trailer park flows, and until this interceptor or work is done here, no additional flow is needed. But we have it expandable to 2,800 gallon a minute, and that gets us the full growth of this blue area here and the orange area to that pump station. We would then have to construct dual force mains. That's just two different size pipes that we would bring in. One size around for the 550 gallon a minute, the initial flows that we would see for Lord knows how long. And then as we develop that, or as that flows are brought to that pump station, is a better way of saying it, that pump station capacity could be increased, the second force main, and then possibly even using both force mains simultaneously at some point in the future. As a result of that, we have these dual force mains that would come up to Bradford. Now we really need to do a lot of work to Bradford. Again, we have a capacity issue there. Really do work to Bradford, but because Bradford Pump Station 1 and Bradford Pump Station 2 probably means nothing to you. It's just two pump stations that pump to the sewer plant, but they're each on their own 12-inch force main. They operate independently, but we need both of those force mains to get that flow. So there would be work that we would have to do at Bradford 2 to accommodate bringing those flows in from Bradford 1. So a little bit more costly. Again, I'll get into the cost of these alternatives in a minute. Any questions on that before I move forward? Pros and cons. Again, this option meets the project requirements. What this option does do that the previous one did not was it does accommodate approved growth within the Georgetown's existing system, and it does have the potential to eliminate two of those pump stations initially, right off the bat. Some of the problems, it does still require multiple pumping. We still got to pump it at this new pump station. We got to pump it into Bradford, pump it again, eventually get to the sewer plant. Adds an additional pump station, has higher O&M costs because of the multiple pump station, and this option does have the highest life cycle or total cost of ownership option so far. We got another option to go. It does keep the pump station located in the aquifer recharge area. It's still a highly visible pump station located there on US 25 south of the Greenbelt, and it does require major upgrades to both Bradford Pump Station 1 and Bradford Pump Station 2. So pros and cons there.
12-inch line for pump station, that's pretty big, isn't it?
That's gravity sewer?
No, force main.
Force main, it's a big line. Yeah, we can get some good flow. I'll look at my genius over here and tell them how much flow you can get through a 12-inch force main.
3 million gallons.
3 million gallons?
Like it's a 6 million gallon capacity using that.
But again, peak flow of 3 million gallons, so that's probably something less than 1 million gallons on the average day.
But it's a big force main, yeah. In general, that's a lot of sewage.
So then we started looking at for alternative number 3. We said, okay, let's bring in this purple area as well. And again, just trying to look how we can have some economies of scales of what we're trying to do here. So for this option, we're still bringing in the mobile home park and the environs around there. We're looking at the blue flow as well, again with construction of another interceptor to bring it down to there, which is not part of this project. But then we also have this purple area. And you can see most of that purple or fuchsia area is already served by collector sewers, or by gravity sewers, just go through existing pump stations. But we're saying build basically an interceptor. Well, let me go flows first. We got flows of about 2.3 million gallons, peak flows of around 9 million gallons. Only using, again, the peaking factor 4, so we can size those facilities. The facilities themselves, again, we have the collector sewers within the mobile home park. We have the interceptor sewer that would bring it all the way down to the pump station. In this case, it's a heck of a lot longer interceptor, gravity sewer all the way to one pump station here, which would then have a short force main up to pump into the two 12-inch existing force mains that we have from Bradford 1 and 2. And that would be a 4,000 gallon a minute pump station. And we can, with this option, you have several pump stations, Bradford 1, Bradford 2, Edderwood pump station. All those could then be eliminated almost immediately as part of this project. Okay.
John, you're still talking about serving areas north of the Greenbelt.
Yeah.
Even on that side of it.
And we went down to the Greenbelt line, we looked at all these properties and calculated potential future flows to make sure we had everything there, so we got but everything is north of the Greenbelt, as far as the development that we ever consider for any of these alternatives. So, some of the pros and cons here. Obviously, this project still meets the minimum project requirements. It does accommodate the approved growth that the mayor just talked about north of the Greenbelt. It has the potential to immediately eliminate up to 7 existing pump stations. This is just consolidating all these pump stations, allowing more flow in, and getting down to 1 pump station. Because of getting rid of all those pump stations and only pumping one time, it has the lowest O&M cost, and it relieves those capacity concerns that we talked about, kind of on the southeast part of the collection system where there's no capacity for additional growth or additional flows to come in. It relieves that capacity, and it really maximizes the existing infrastructure that Georgetown has by the way of those 2 force mains bringing the flow to town. Cons, highest initial capital cost, it's a lot longer interceptor, really that interceptor on grade, it's a bigger pump station, and it has high, not the highest, but a high life cycle cost. And I'll get into the cost next. Any questions before I jump into that? You look
How
like
much
you got
does
a
it,
question.
how much does it eliminate in terms of cost? When you take that many pump stations offline, how much savings can you?
Well, I'm gonna, let me, can I get to that
Sure,
slide, and if I
sure.
don't answer it, then shoot. Not really.
No idea.
Alternative number 1, what we did, and just to kind of, we put everything in what we call a present worth basis, or a 30-year life cycle cost, or total cost of ownership, kind of any of the 3. So we got all the alternatives, and we use what's called the OPCC. It's the opinion of probable construction cost. It's the best we know at this point in time. Obviously, as we get further into design, we're going to be able to bring that number down. We got like a 35% contingency now. We hope to before construction be down to 10%. We really know what we're building at that point in time. So we have the original upfront capital cost, and then we have the 30-year O&M cost. So basically what we take is we take that operation and maintenance cost of all those pump stations for every year. They're all happening for the next 30 years. We grab all that, bring it back to today's dollar, and add that onto the initial capital cost there. So that right there, this number here indicates all of the operation and maintenance costs associated with each of those alternatives brought back to today's dollars. And as you can see, for alternative 1 against the based option, is about $2 million. 2, which is a larger pump station, allowing more flow in, multiple pumping, is 2.3. And you can see with alternate 1, we're down to 1 pump station. It's all the flows flowing by gravity down to that 1 pump station. It's getting pumped in 1 time to the sewage treatment plant. So then we add in these O&M dollars, which again are brought back to today's dollars, the opinion of probable construction costs, which are always at today's dollars, and we add those 2 up, and you get the 30-year total cost of ownership for each of those. And so the first one, only bringing in the trailer park flows, is around 9.4. We got about 14.4 for 2, and 13.8 for alternative number 3. That's in present worth dollars for total project cost, total cost of ownership. Did that answer your question?
Well,
I didn't give you exact numbers.
No, I didn't.
And I can dive in to get you those
Yeah,
exact numbers,
yeah.
but it's all in the calculation.
Yeah, because what I'd like to back into is how much savings would we have potentially by eliminating those pump stations, and whatever that monthly cost is, kind of convert that into a monthly payment to help pay for the future debt service.
And I can get you that information.
Okay.
I don't have it right now. That's a very good question. Now, one other item I do want to point out here is that because of the funding requirements that we have, we cannot do any type of regionalization. To get the low interest loan that Chase talked about as a half a percentage point, we've got to maintain some integrity of the original project. And so what we did is we pulled out some of these costs of these elimination of these 3 pump stations, an additional $950,000. That's just gravity sewers, 3 gravity sewers, bringing the flow from that pump station, gravity sewer, down to the infrastructure in 3 locations, eliminating those pump stations as part of that project. So this number really needs to include the $950,000, but from a funding agency standpoint, I can't include those costs, if that makes any sense at all. So, but for full transparency, those numbers are out there. So we went back and said, okay, we looked at all of what I started off with were these selection criteria here. We looked at all of the 3 alternatives that we looked at and said, okay, which weights out better? So we said, okay, all 3 of these projects meet the project goals, and those are the goals that Chase set forth in the first part of his presentation. Alternative 3 meets them better than alternative 2, which meets it better than alternative 1. Looking at life cycle cost or the total cost of ownership, alternative 1, you can't beat it. It's the cheapest one out there, but it doesn't meet a lot of the other things we're looking at. Alternative 2 and 3, roughly about the same. For the cost of what we're bringing up here with the contingencies we have, 2 and 3 are roughly the same amount of money. Constructability, they're all easily constructible, can all be done from an engineering and construction standpoint. From operability, obviously option number 3 is more advantageous for the utility. They're the ones that got to maintain all those pump stations, those 59 pump stations with those 8 guys. This knocks it down to a lot, low 50s with the same 8 guys, and a larger pump station. And it does accommodate the approved growth that the mayor talked about with alternatives 2 and 3. Obviously 3 does it better than 2 because of the more air that it brings into the system. Questions on that? Am I missing anything? So a recommendation. As the mayor and Chase said, we did meet with the utility board on Tuesday of last week. We went through this presentation, and they have agreed with this recommendation. So now it comes to you, obviously. But so it is our recommendation, and now I guess the utility board as well, to proceed with design and construction alternative 3, which is the major, again, I won't call it a regional pump station, it's a consolidated pump station approach. And for the following reasons. It eliminates the raw sewage discharge at Kmart. Just the reason we're doing this is the environmental issues that we have with the trailer park now. This eliminates those problems. It has the potential to eliminate up to 7 existing pump stations. And as we got into this, I want to take credit for more than the 7 pump stations, because if we don't do this project, you're going to get more pump stations because there's no other way to bring it in the system. They're going to have to build in pump stations and figure out a way to get it to the sewer treatment plant. So again, eliminates the need for future pump stations, at least in the southern part up from the green belt north into the city. It does at this point in time, as Chase talked about with the funding, it leverages that project funding we currently have in place. We have a multi-jurisdictional collaboration going on. It leverages all these things that we have in place at the current time. It provides capacity for continued approved development really along the bypass and north of the Greenbelt. Everything that you guys want to develop anyway as an agency. It also provides, and we always say it this way, provides really the utility with a facility plan on how to develop that part of the area down to the Greenbelt in this area. So it kind of gives them a roadmap for what to do. So that is a recommendation coming out of us. So with that, kind of where we are as far as schedule. Again, as Chase said, we came under contract in August. This preliminary design submittal is what we're doing here today. We submitted that to the mayor, the city attorney, and Chase. They all got copies. Andrew's already submitted that to the mobile home park owners. But this presentation is kind of the culmination of this whole study that we're doing. The next step would be to go ahead and get a design contract issued. Move right into design. If we can get that done next month, that'd be great. We'll stay on schedule. If not, things will slide some. But we're looking to try to finish up design May timeframe. Have submitted for advertising for construction. That'll be in July. We got a month that we have to wait for the funding agency. They need a month to even after we get bids in to even authorize us to award that contract. So we'll bring it back to you in August with a construction contract to look at. And then construction will start September 19 of next year, and hopefully in about 13 or 14 months from now, this thing may be done. Or 2 more than that.
You know, it's kind of funny, well, not funny, sitting here, there's been 2 or 3 of us sit on this council discuss this sewer problem at that trailer park 12, 15, 16, 17 years ago, and people just laughed at us and there's nothing wrong with it, nothing wrong with it. Cornette was one of the biggest pushers for this. And I know he's very excited to see it getting done. I'm glad to see it getting done. It's been an issue for years. We just finally tackled it, really.
Stars have aligned.
Yeah, something's aligned. Financials has aligned. That's what's aligned.
Yeah. And the finances aligned, and and it's putting together different plans for the benefit each of the other.
Yeah.
We're clearly addressing the environmental problem at the trailer park.
Right.
With recommendation number 3, we're adding significant improvements to our existing sewage system
Yeah.
that need to happen. If we know we have put together a funding package that can address the cost of the trailer park, and we can clearly identify for the trailer park owners and for taxpayers exactly how much that's costing. The balance of the project, the what is over the trailer park amount, is benefit to our general sewer system and will be an expenditure through the sewer system. And as a result of that system-wide improvement, that type of expenditure will require a rate increase. Not a large rate increase, but clearly when we start talking about capital improvements to our existing system, we're looking at some form of a rate increase. We had this conversation with the water board last week. Through the remarkable growth of our system, we haven't had increases. Those have been almost artificially low due to the amazing growth that GMWSS has had. And the fact that Scott County Fiscal Court put over $10 million into the water company to extend water lines and increase the customer base without expecting any return. So our rates have been pretty artificially low for some time. This general system improvement will need to have the calculations done, and we'll need to see what the cost to our general rate base will be. There will be some cost, but we think it's an appropriate future-oriented cost that we're overdue for. I just wanted you all to have the entire picture of what this recommendation entails. Anything you want to add to that, Chase?
No, sir, you summed it up well. I will say, Alan has run numbers on what that cost would be for, we looked at the base model, 7 million, and then there's that increase for option 3, and then the rate increase that we're looking at would be, because we can borrow that money at the same rate, the 4 million, we can increase that to pay for the expanded alternative number 3, that 0.5%. What we're looking at, we believe, is approximately a 40-cent increase on the minimum sewer bill for this project.
Relatively manageable. I just wanted to provide some context for you all to have a broader picture of what this will entail.
And to say, as the mayor already discussed, as well as John, when we're talking about the approved growth, we are talking about, again, north of the green belt, and we're talking about development community that's already coming in to meet with me saying we need capacity in this area, and I don't have an answer right now.
So Chase, if we did this, then would we create a privilege fee for those areas?
Absolutely.
Expect some
The delta, again, between the base and alternative 3, I believe a good bit of that money could be created and recaptured with a privilege fee agreement.
Okay.
For the new development north of the Greenbelt, again, north of the Greenbelt that wants to come into that system. Yes, we create a privilege fee.
You say north of the Greenbelt. Would that be some additional property that's right off the bypass?
For example, the Prim Gardner property.
Yeah,
just
gotcha. That answers my question.
This is one that I've had meetings with already that are saying, we're ready to develop this.
Okay.
How are you going to get sewer to us? As well as up here.
Okay.
And I don't have any, because the system is maxed out in this area. There's just nowhere to
all I'm
go.
seeing is a green dot on the ceiling.
I know, right?
I'm seeing a lot of green dots.
We're following
It's
it though.
reflecting on.
It's on there, but you kind of watch them both. You just
Also, in down here, we already have developers asking for capacity.
Yeah.
And again, that We don't have room at Bradford 1 and Bradford 2
So,
right now.
so how do you get the blue area over to the green line? You have to get easements through property owners that
We would have to build another interceptor gravity sewer. As
Right.
John said, there's a draw down here.
Right.
You could build a sewer that flows down and ties in right here.
Right, so I guess you'd have to have easements from property owners then, right? How doable is that? Are they,
I don't have an answer for you.
For that,
John?
that entire green line, we need easements.
I understand,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But something like that, I guess you can, that's a little different, right? You can create eminent domain or whatever you need to put an easement in for that.
Rather not, but that's a tool we can use on
Right,
this type of
right.
project.
It's different than taking somebody's property, it's an easement in a floodplain. Is that right?
And they're compensated for it.
You're right.
And we put it back.
Yeah.
The way it was.
So, I guess another question then, is it a $14 million project? Roughly?
Alternative number 3, yes.
But that doesn't include
The 900 million.
the money to get the blue area over
That
to
is
the.
correct.
Okay. So why, how much, the 0.5% financing, you're limited on that as to how much we can obtain? And that's 4-point-something million? That's the max?
We can increase that borrowing amount at 0.5%.
For 30 years.
We're limited on what portions of the project we can expend it on.
Okay. But if we do option 3, all of that green line would have to be, that would all be a part of taking care of the trailer park. To me, I see it a
All
huge
the way into the
percentage of
city.
it because of this project.
Yes.
Is that the way you all see it?
And that would all be eligible for half.
At a 0.5%.
In fact, the more we looked at alternatives 2 and 3, and 2 kind of disappears because 3 makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Almost, I hate to say this out loud, but version 3 for the general sewer improvements is worth doing, even if we didn't do the trailer park.
Eliminate the pump station.
Now, we need to do both, but the improvements to our general system are so crystal clear needed that they almost stand alone. But if they're connected, they achieve a 0.5% financing.
My bigger question was always gonna be, what if we don't, what if we just do option 1? I mean, what about there's nothing can happen down to the greenbelt, all these other developments, there's just no capacity, period.
Makes sense.
This was everything.
The thing I want to try to do, and I'm sure all of us do, is want to put as much of this on the trailer park and the owners of the trailer park as we possibly can. And I want to understand that whole big relationship a little
Well,
bit.
and it's we have a tightrope to walk. We have to be able to assure our ratepayers and taxpayers that they're not funding improvements to a private trailer park.
Right.
We also have to be able to prove to the owners of the trailer park that they're not underwriting our general sewer project.
Yeah.
So I think we've got a balanced obligation to be able to explain this to both sides in ways that are very understandable and clear.
If you look at alternate 1, that is the base, that is the project, that is what they are responsible for. Anything above that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but it's not a gravity flow line either. And that's not really in anyone's best interest that has to deal with it for the long term. So I might argue that, hey, if we're gonna do this, if we're gonna come in and save you, throw you a lifeline, we're gonna put in a gravity line. And because of that, there is some additional cost. We wanna do it right.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't understand it as well as you all, but that's just my take on it. And that would be my strategy in speaking with them.
And I'm in total agreement with you there. We have to keep them at the table in order to get that 0.5% interest rate. That has to be part of the project.
Or take them out.
No, can't do it.
We can't do that?
If we take them out, we've lost the 0.5%.
Wait, I don't mean take them out, I mean buy them out.
Well, sure.
And if we buy them out, and all these are possibilities, but each one has a little complication.
Yeah.
I understand.
There's the $1,075,000 KIA grant that we will lose. And then this whole project looks,
Why would we lose that, Mayor? I'm just curious.
we've been put on notice repeatedly for a year that if we don't get it spent on this thing, that they're gonna pull that
Okay.
and reappropriate it.
I'm with you, I'm with you.
We've fought that battle for,
No, I'm with you. I thought you meant if for some reason we own the trailer park instead of whoever owns it now owns it, we would lose that grant, but that wouldn't be the case.
timing wise, the grant would just be gone. If this goes on, the $1,075,000 isn't gonna lay there much longer. We don't have time to do much with that.
Except the project.
I don't want to be the doomsday person. We've turned ourselves into pretzels to keep it there. And
This project cannot be simplified. I mean, it is a many-headed thing.
Yeah.
It keeps
You know,
throwing new appendages.
Is it so big and so complex that somebody's got to make a commitment somewhere to keep this thing going? And I mean, I've seen situations like that happen. Or does everybody have to sign up and be on board to get it off the ground?
We're going to face one of those points, David. We think that based on our latest engineering numbers, we think the owners of the trailer park are going to have a greater responsibility than what we've led them to believe they're going to have. And what I've asked Andrew to convey to them, here are the extra costs, how are you going to handle them? We can always start, well, I don't think we want to start eating their cost in order to keep it alive.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we keep them properly segregated. And then if, this is such a balancing act for the owners, they've got to maintain a rate structure for their particular demographic within the park.
Right.
So they don't, this whole thing doesn't just fall down from its own weight. So what we would do is, all these conversations with the owners and the user agreements, and if they walk, can we own it? Any of those things are still possible. What we'd like to do is have you consider this presentation, and at the December 10th meeting, we'd like to be able to move forward with a contract with Hazen and Sawyer to do this design work on this option. The good news is we'll be making that decision and getting that work paid for with grant funds. So you're still not spending city money if we award this contract on December the 10th. So I think this council's still in a pretty comfortable position.
Yeah, no, this is encouraging, quite honestly. John, can you get back to us or let us know what the savings might be on eliminating the 7?
I should be able to pull that directly out of a spreadsheet. I'll get that to Chase.
And anything else that's kind of associated or tied into it?
It's been important for the council to be able to, when we consider any additional debt service, if we can look for any offsetting expenses to reduce that new debt service, council's sensitive to that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all. How we do on time? Oh, we're doing
Another
good.
day.
Another day of paradise.
That's why you got that clock that way, so we don't know it's
Yeah.
7:50.
Just sorry about being happier.
Really almost 8.
We'll fix it when we leave tonight.
Yeah, we need to.
Okay, it is finally item 9 on the agenda. I appreciate your patience tonight, Mr. Nicholson. Not that you need civics lessons, but you seem...
I'm just glad to see that my community isn't the only one dealing with massive sewer problems. It's at least somewhat heartening for me to see, and it certainly was good for me to learn the very basic lesson on the gravity and the force main. That's actually helps explain my projects a lot easier.
Yes, sir. Mr. Nicholson is back with us tonight. We have 2 second readings I have second reading of an annexation ordinance and second reading of a zone change ordinance. Are they in that order for any particular reason?
The annexation ordinance.
Should come first?
It should come first since the zone change is conditioned upon it, but honestly, it really doesn't matter.
We couldn't rezone to a city zone if it was not in the city.
It has to be zoned.
Okay.
If that helps make sense there.
Then I assume there's going to be some discussion of this. We can have second reading, get a motion second. I think there'll be some discussion. Nick, why don't we go ahead and get it on the floor and then go from there?
An ordinance annexing into the city of Georgetown certain real property containing 59.83 acres located at or around the intersection of McCullen Circle and Lexington Road in Scott County, Kentucky. Summary 1. Annexed into Georgetown city limits by written consent of the property owners in accordance with KRS 81A 412, 59.83 acres of property located at or around the intersection of McCullen Circle and Lexington Road in Scott County, Kentucky. 2. Provides for an effective date upon passage and publication. Publicly introduced and read for the first time November 12, 2018. Publicly read the second time November 26, 2018.
Thank you. Let's see. Mr. Thompson was the sponsor of that motion?
Yes, I was called to ask to sponsor it.
Is there a motion for approval of the second reading of the annexation ordinance?
Mayor, I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made. Is there a second?
And the second would be simply to have the discussion, right, the conversation of the.
That's right. We're simply putting it on the table.
I'll make the second.
It won't bind you to vote for it, don't worry.
Does not bind him.
Exactly.
That's correct. So, thank you. Motion's been made and seconded, and it's on the floor and open for council discussion.
Well, I'll start, because I'm in the same boat that I was last time. I'm going to vote no for your annexation and no for your zone change, simply based on the apartments. We need the housing, and if you were to take the apartments off and come back with the housing, I think you would get my approval, and you'd probably get unanimous approval, but the apartments is becoming a situation in Georgetown that there are so many apartments in Georgetown, and the constituency in the community don't like the idea of seeing so many apartments. And not only are there apartments here, but they are being seen right up against the bypass as it's going around. Like I said last time, your apartments you're doing are very nice. And then on top of that, over the holiday weekend, I watched It's a Wonderful Life. The whole movie is about Pottersfield versus Bailey Park, of having home ownership versus apartments, what that does to things in your community and how that affects your community, which a lot of other things are in It's a Wonderful Life. But it just reinforced the idea of not being appreciative of having more apartments coming into Georgetown. So for me, I don't think more apartments are a positive for our community, and it's not just what we're doing, what we're seeing with and dealing with today. It's what we're going to have to deal with, because you're going to put the apartments up if it gets approved. They're going to be there for 30 plus years. What will they be like then? And how will they change? What will the complexion of the community change? And they're right there in front of everything. So I'm not in favor either of them based on the apartments coming into the community. We don't need any more of those. And your apartments are almost as many apartments as there's going to be houses there. But we do need the houses. So I'd like to see this not get approved tonight and then come back to us again and rework it with housing, much as the development that we talked about earlier tonight up on North 25 did. They took the apartments off and it was approved. So that's my thoughts.
I can answer some of it, and I know that I cannot change your mind on a lot of that.
You can go ahead.
And all I can say is that is not how neighborhoods are being built these days.
And I looked that up, by the way, on that as well, because I look back, I have heard that over the course of the last maybe 10 years, that we are changing the way that we're developing community outlets. But with that done, I mean, in the past too, we've changed the way the development since the turn of the century, our last century changed according to what the communities were doing, things were doing. But then so many times, if you look at what happened in 1920s, 1930s, the mistakes that were made then caused so many mistakes in in cities in particular, that then they had to go back with urban renewal and do things like that, which created more mistakes. If you look at the complexion of Georgetown as it has been in my lifetime, we are a community of home dwellers. We need some of those other things in the community. But right now, when you drive around the bypass, you look around the community, what you're seeing, what our community is reacting to is all of these apartments that are coming around and that are here. We know there's a need, but they're starting to feel like they're dominating. And the community right now does not want that. And my constituencies are talking to me that they don't want that, and I have a responsibility to them to honor what they're seeing, what they're feeling, what they're thinking. And just because it's right now, the development is right now, and that's what you're asking to be staged and do upon, doesn't mean it's going to be right for the future. So
I fully understand, and that's why you have a comprehensive plan. That's why you have a comprehensive plan that looks to the future, that goes out 20 years. It doesn't look back to 1930. It's looking out to see what 20 years from now looks like. And this is supported by the comprehensive plan. Your own planning staff determined that it was supported by the comprehensive plan. This type of neighborhood is supported by the comprehensive plan. It is encouraging to have a multitude of types of houses, types of densities, and types of residential uses all within one development, and encourage that type of community interaction. And yes, from a unit base, there are almost as much apartments as single family. From an area base, it is not close. It is 40 to 14 in favor of single family as far as acreage goes. This is a single family oriented neighborhood. It has some apartments. This development that's in front of you today is a single family development.
okay, acreage, you're correct. The
Yes.
acreage, there is more acreage going to houses.
Yes.
But units, there's almost as many units as apartment units as there are houses.
And that's based on market demand and market conditions that your own comprehensive plan outlines and recommends this type of neighborhood.
Okay.
And I know I'm not going to change your mind.
No, you're not, and I can argue, but there's no use doing that because you are right.
I think
So
this
I
is,
will
I think this is a no vote, and you're not going to change it.
No.
I would cite, for some, I would cite the most desirable neighborhood in Lexington, Chevy Chase, as a premier example of mixed-use developments and different densities and different types of housing, all in the same area. If you want a great example, there's Chevy Chase. If you want a terrible example, there's the Colony. We can find both of them in central Kentucky.
But in Georgetown, we find more of the not Chevy Chase situations.
Exactly.
And we find more of the Colony because so many of us have grown up with that, and it does make a negative. And I'm not saying your development will be like that, but still, there's a negative there, and there's a negative with the community on having more apartments.
I understand. Chevy Chase.
I'm confident on one council member's vote. Is there any other council member that has an opinion here?
I'm voting no. I agree with Karen, and, just residential development doesn't pay for itself here to begin with, but the apartments are just a real drain, and they're a drain on our school system and our services, and, I think the apartments that are there are lovely right now, but I'm not going to change my mind.
I understand, and again, I'm not going to try to change your mind. I do want to clarify one thing. It has been very, very well documented that the concept that apartments cause more of a drain on urban service money is inaccurate. It goes against what you think of because you think more people, more units, but the actual cost on urban services have been studied at length. I had just had a Harvard study introduced for a project that I was doing in Versailles, and it is clear urban services are not at a higher rate. They're actually substantially lower than what a single-family development cost is. Additionally, when it comes to the school system, it is dramatically different. About 0.21 apartments, for every apartment, there's 0.21 school-aged children. That is it. With the single-family house, that number on average is around 2.2. It is substantially less for the actual schools. I know that that does not address all of your concerns, but I do have to point that out because it is a common, thought that apartments cost a lot more for urban services, and it's just not true. They increase property taxes, and they do not cost as much on urban services.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from council members?
Can I make a couple of comments?
Sure.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to mention that I did reach out to Mr. Nicholson today, and he was kind enough to take some time to talk to me about their project. I share some of the same concerns that my fellow council members have and other folks in the community have. And, when I look at the plat, one of the things that he just mentioned that is very clear, if you are looking at it from the last meeting, is that the land mass that the apartments takes up is very small. I mean, when you look at it, it looks like it could be 10% or less of the map or the plat. The concern I had that I expressed today was what it looks like from the bypass. I mean, you all are going to be controlling all the homes within. So, I mean, if you all want to build homes next to your apartments and deal with that, that's your project to do. And I don't know that we have any, I mean, I think you all are going to control that just fine. The thing that I ask would be, would you be willing to do some upgrades between the apartments and the bypass? And I think your answer was that you would certainly be willing to do that. And the thing that I threw out were things like additional landscaping, fencing, the 4-rail horse plank fence. I think that would kind of elevate the appearance of the project as opposed to the state wire fence that's there now. And I know you can get a permit, you can have that removed and
Right.
replace the fencing. And I think that's probably, those are the biggest concerns I have. I know that when you all do a project like this, you do a feasibility study, and you know what the market's going to bear. And I know there's people that are concerned with how many apartments that are being built in Georgetown, and I say the same thing. But I also realize that there are studies, and you all are beyond the study. You all have the best study. I mean, you'll have apartments, and you know what that market is. The other thing that I would share with everyone, and I'm not trying to talk anybody one direction than another. Maybe I'm justifying where I'm coming from on this, because I did have concerns coming into it. But there are people that move to this community that accept jobs at any of our manufacturing companies or any of the other companies perhaps that are with the temporary agency. That's just part of the process now of becoming a full-time employee. And most of the times, those individuals can't obtain traditional financing to buy a house until they become full-time employees. And, I realize our comprehensive plan talks about the growth that we're going to have for the next 20 years. The apartments that are being built right now are going to get absorbed probably very quickly.
They will be.
And I guess I go back to what can we do to make this look better?
Right.
Not that your apartments don't look good. I went out and looked at the landscaping. I kind of stepped it off. And right now, once you get onto your property, the existing apartments, really you've got 2 rows of trees that are literally 15 feet apart. They're not very big trees, but I mean, that's just the nature of relatively new trees. But I do realize that in time, those trees are going to help buffer and block the view of the bypass.
They will, and I found some more information out since we last spoke about the apartments that are already existing.
Okay.
So at the very front of that, there is a 20-foot easement that is going to be for the trail, the multi-use trail that will come up on the property and kind of intersect with the existing Kroger kind of stoplight right there. And part of that trail easement is also coming with a landscaping plan.
Okay.
So right now where there are sparse trees in there,
Right.
it is going to be supplemented basically once the landscaping plan for that trail has been approved
Okay.
as well.
And to the right of your main entrance, there are some established and existing trees. I presume many of those are going to stay or not be disturbed if everything goes through. So, I did talk to Mr. Hartley and the mayor a little bit prior to the meeting about, what could we do to ensure that the fence would go in place? And
Right.
I know you mentioned conditional. zone?
Conditional zoning restrictions or the planning staff has as conditions of approval.
And
If
I
you-
don't know if that's what Mr. Hartley would prefer, or if there's something else that
If
would meet.
You look at condition number 6 in the staff report. It already talks about the need for perimeter screening. That would include this area. There, it's at the council's behest if you would like to alter that language that's on condition 6, but the door is already open for you if you would.
Okay.
We are happy to agree to basically sit down with planning staff and create some type of landscaping screening area. Have a dedicated easement area, have it subject to an approvable landscaping plan done by the planning commission.
Yeah.
We're happy to give you anything that you all need tonight in order to be assured that there's going to be significant buffer in this area. There always has been planned to be significant buffer in this area. It's just typically that's done at the preliminary development plan stage. So we hadn't had the conversation yet with planning staff, with the planning commission, about what exactly that screening looks like.
Yeah. For me, having a nice looking horse plank fence that is obviously constructed by you all and maintained over
Absolutely.
the years by you all, not just something that is kind of neglected, but maintained. And I'm sure whoever owns the property, that would be their future responsibility as well if, for some reason, Ball decided to sell.
And that is why a lot of times that landscaping stays on the kind of the property side, not the right-of-way side,
Gotcha.
in order to force
Gotcha.
property owner maintenance.
Okay. With us not, or I guess I'd be receptive to what would be the best way that Andrew would be comfortable with having that stipulation added to.
You've also given planning commission very clear directive.
Right.
On the record.
I just want to make
very
sure
clear
that
directive.
any request that this body makes gets carried through.
Absolutely.
And not just leave it up to planning and zoning. They may have their own criteria, their own requirements, and that's perfectly fine. But things like this sometimes are important to this body.
Absolutely.
And at least this issue is kind of important to me, and I've heard from others that they agree.
I mean,
You're right about that.
I'm hesitant to put any kind of conditions in the ordinance itself for fear of singling out a particular development. I'm happy to hear that you all are representing that you're willing to sit down with the planning commission. The proper place for the council to direct the planning commission to provide the appropriate landscape and land use buffers is in the landscape and land use buffers ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says, here are how developments shall provide screening to areas. And you do it that way in order to avoid being arbitrary, in order to avoid singling out a particular development and saying, this is what we want in this particular situation. I know it's tough to avoid to want to do that because every situation is different, but that's the appropriate way to handle something like this. And I believe that there is time to do that, to change the subdivision regs or the landscape and land use buffers ordinance to anticipate types of developments that we're seeing to address those issues.
Okay. I hear what you're saying, but, and I guess if Mr. Nicholson were willing to say, hey, we will do this, this will be one of the things we'll do, I would be comfortable enough with his word representing the developer.
It is wonderful to have my own words thrown back in my face if I go before the planning commission and try to skimp whatsoever on this exact topic.
Yeah.
I don't think I could be more clear while looking into the camera that we are willing to commit to that.
Okay. In addition to this piece that we're talking about tonight, I did go out and I looked at, for probably another 200 to 250 feet to the left, it would tie in both sides of the project. And you and I talked about that on the phone today.
On the existing?
The existing one
Yes.
as well, because the elevation, it's
substantial.
it's pretty parallel to the road, and then it drops off, and once it goes about 200 to 250 feet, it kind of loses the effectiveness.
Right.
And I think that's reasonable for me.
I understand.
You know what I'm saying?
I very much do.
Okay.
Well, when I came in here tonight, I'm leaning one way, and David's making me lean another way.
Well.
My biggest problem is when I see building come into the community, I like it for like our garbage pickups, where we are making some kind of revenue off of the building that's coming in. And I know this will have your own garbage pickup. It won't be the city of Georgetown.
It's for the multifamily.
Right.
For all the single family, I would assume that would be. I'm not exactly positive, but I think in these types of neighborhoods, usually the only reason why it wouldn't be city waste disposal is if the city does not have the actual truck to take a trash compactor. That is I know that is one of Lexington's main issues, that they do not actually have the truck to pick up the type of kind of trash compactor or the large kind of commercial storage unit.
Money in that line of business, so we got out of that.
I know, I know we did.
Yeah, so true.
But there,
You know, the other thing I'll say is that, you know, there's a number of developers out there that can do a project, and Ball Home certainly has the ability. They've shown that. There's not going to be a question about follow through in terms of being able to fund the project. So, I mean, there's, you know, I guess that's a positive as well.
Well, for me, when I heard from my constituents, and probably Karen did too, you know, there weren't any, you know, negative things about Ball Homes or the landscaping or anything like that. It was just basically a concern about the apartments, the green belt, and the traffic, so. And because I'm elected to represent the constituents, so, you know, that's just kind of.
Although technically, this is not in the green belt.
It is not, and
It's not, but people had said it was a move towards that.
It is not.
Yeah, I know, but that's what.
Just to be technical here.
I
this
know.
is not in the green belt.
But they said it's going that way.
Well, the
so.
good news is we ensured that it cannot go that way. With this application, we did a rezone for the greenbelt area that's associated with this property to make it conservation in the county, to ensure that this is locking in this development, that it cannot go any further south in any way because you're into the conservation zoned area. I have to stress that this is inside the urban service boundary today. It was identified in your comprehensive plan for this exact use. And it's matching the exact zoning that's right next door and making sure that you are not upzoning outside of McClellan Circle. You are staying at the R2 level. You are not increasing density to a zone that would be kind of better off closer to town. From an applicant's perspective, the planning staff obviously agreed with us. This was a clear recommendation of approval because it fit everything that the comprehensive plan said that they wanted to see when land came in for development.
The other thing I'll say that helps me a little bit with this situation is the fact that it really doesn't have a negative impact on anybody that's around it. Because they own the property beside it, you've got the green belt and the floodplain behind them, and you got farmland to the right of them. Their access is off the bypass. It's not going to have a negative impact on any other neighborhoods or subdivisions. You know, I mean, the cities, I guess they're going to put in the infrastructure and the roads, and it's going to tie directly into the bypass. So from that perspective, it lends itself well to their requests.
Mayor, got a couple questions, if I could.
Yes, sir.
In no particular order.
Sure.
Some of the questions I was going to ask, Mr. Lesby's already asked, but I would like to go back on follow-up to one of his questions. If you're at the stoplight now, there, Kroger, going across the bypass into the current entrance where the apartment complex is. So I just want to make sure I understand correctly. So if you're looking towards the right, where we're talking about with the zone change and annexation,
yes,
you're committing that there's going to be, whether it's landscaping, fencing, whatever that is, that there's going to be improvements there on that side.
all the way along this side right here. Like, without a doubt, it's already a condition.
Okay, but there is going to be significant, or not, maybe significant might not be the right word, but there is going to be some type of buffer or landscaping, whatever that is. You're committing that that's going to happen.
Yes.
If you're going if you're at that same stoplight and going left,
That's the 200 to 250 feet.
there's going to be some.
So we're in front of the
that's going to
existing
match
apartment.
up.
I do not know if it's going to match up because of the trail.
Okay.
So we have dedicated 20-foot easement in that exact area to basically, I'm not sure if it's Scott County or the city of Georgetown for the future multi-use trail that's going to connect with the entire green belt. That was a type of kind of large system improvement that was one of the major recommendations of the comprehensive plan and the green belt study that was conducted. So there's a strip there that we cannot landscape because it's in the easement that is going to be future landscaping and the trail itself. So as that development completes, as that multi-use trail basically is built there, that's when this landscaping is going to increase as well.
There are going to be some improvements on
Yes.
that side as well.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is on the existing development plan for that apartment site that shows the easement area, shows that there is a landscaping plan that's going in there.
Again, these are in no particular order. If you're looking just at the current those
Mhm.
multiple apartment complexes that are there now.
Yes.
Some of them are already completed. There's still some in the very back that look like they're still under construction. Are all of those rented at the present time? The ones that are completed?
I do not know. I know a large substantial percentage of them are.
Okay.
If you drive out there, the parking lot is it's near full.
Well,
I do not have the exact unit occupancy count, but as each one is coming online, I know that there's a list of people that have already applied to get in to that. I just don't know if every unit has been occupied. I do know that there's an existing waiting list to get in.
okay. And there's a reason I'm asking that question, because I think Mr. Lesby touched on that earlier with where we're at as a community today. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting to know. In the new development that's being proposed, going back to what we discussed at our last council meeting when we had the first reading, there's part of that property that's actually not coming into the city, that's going to stay in the county.
Correct.
And I just want to confirm that piece of property that's not being brought into the city, that the HOA is going to maintain that piece of property, whether it's a tree falling down or if it's anything at all that happens in that area, the HOA is going to take care of it. The county's not going to have any responsibility, nor the city.
The HOA absolutely is. The city will not, the county will not. And we've already talked, and we will put it in HOA documents once they're actually created. We're a far ways away from when those documents do get created. But we are committing that will be HOA maintained. We view that as a huge amenity feature. And so we want that to be maintained. We want that to be a selling feature, not an eyesore.
Then one last question, and you might not know precisely, but if you're on the bypass, on the outer side of the bypass, the outer loop, from that outer loop to where the very first apartments are going to back up to, what's the distance from the bypass to where those apartments are going to back up
So,
to the bypass?
right now, and this is something that I kind of have to stress, you all aren't improving basically these apartments, the location of apartments, the number of units. You're not improving anything kind of related to that. This is only the concept plan right now. We will have to come back with the exact location of all the buildings, with the exact location of the parking, how far away it sits off the bypass, how far away it sits off the single-family housing. All of that still has to be discussed in detail. That being said, it appears, here we are. You are 100 feet off of the property line from the nearest apartment, and you are even further off that from almost another 100 feet to the location where the turn lane kind of starts. So it's probably about 120 from the property line to the just where it's two-laned, and 100 feet once you're on the property, so 220 feet back off the bypass. And also, as I'm sure you all know, this area has a large kind of already stone berm that is built in to this area right here. So when you are driving along here, you already have a substantial buffer that we are going to be building on top of to further shield any type of view of these apartments.
You done, Mark? I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a couple. I apologize I wasn't here at the last one, so I have 2 or 3 questions.
It's okay.
first of all, is the only entrance and exit into the apartments that are existing and what you want to build is just off of the bypass, and then there will just be streets off of a main road?
There are 2 access points off the bypass.
Okay.
Here is the existing
Yes.
with Kroger's.
Mhm.
Here's the second entrance.
Okay.
And that lines up right here with the existing, I'm blanking on the name of the street right now, but it is lined up where,
Seminole?
I believe.
Okay.
Where we would be able to work with the state in order to get that lit.
Get a-
And we're
okay.
also committing to property improvements right here to add a turn lane in order to alleviate the issues that they're having, trying to take a left out of the existing subdivision.
Okay. The apartments that are being constructed right now, is that a quantity of 300?
I do not
That's okay, you can.
know
take
that
later.
number.
The ones that you want to do now?
Yes.
How many units in the apartment, how many buildings, and then how many single-family residences?
It is a total of 5 buildings. It is 140 units, and it is 161 single-family houses.
Okay. Thank you for the information. I think I heard that it's an existing, what's being built right now is about 300 units.
Okay, I don't have that development plan in front of me, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
But it is the same type, it is the same quality of structure that is there, it is the same look. This is designed to be kind of a kind of second extension of that apartment complex. They are kind of have shared amenity features.
Mhm.
Everyone will have kind of full rights and access to the kind of the full range of offerings that that complex has today.
And are they mostly 2-bedroom, 2-bath?
They are mostly, looks like 1 and 2 bedrooms,
Okay,
and those will have 2 baths.
okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
That's all I have.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how much those rent for by any chance? I know that might not be
I do not, I certainly
Connie,
can
do you
find
know?
out.
About $850.
for the
the 2
1-bedroom?
Well, the 1-bedroom are about $825, yeah.
Which you could purchase a house, start on a house for that.
Not if you come in on a, what David was talking about, through the temporary services. You've got to be on your job 2 years to get financing.
Any other questions for Mr. Nicholson?
I just have a comment. It's not a question to him. It's just a comment to the general public and to my fellow council members. I don't care what the comprehensive plan says about how the development gets developed. The good thing is, if this passes, you'll do the apartments first, and the people that buy the houses know the apartment's there. But I live in a development that at the time that I moved in there, it was pretty much developed, and then in the very front of it, they changed, and actually I think originally it was going to be townhomes, so it actually was a positive, but they changed it to smaller, single-family homes that came in there, that everybody in the back did not expect to come in there, and maybe that's the lack of education on the homeowners that were living there, but came in there and put those in there, ruined our entrance into our subdivision, took the grade of the subdivision down by doing that, and those houses along that little has flipped over time after time after time already, and many of the people that lived in our neighborhood sought and moved out of that neighborhood because of that happened there, that change and that difference in the community that happened. We were in an area, and that wasn't what they expected. Now, in your case, they know what they're getting into and they buy it, and that's better. But that change, it really flipped the neighborhood. It flipped the attitude of the neighborhood, and many people moved out. And that section now our neighborhood is not as nice as it used to be because of changing that. But nevertheless, so when you say it doesn't make a difference, it makes a difference to the community. The community is not happy with these popping up townhomes and popping up apartments all over the place. So I will not say anything more.
I will say that is one of the benefits about doing a development like this as a chunk in one sweep, where it isn't anything that is not planned, it is not anything that people are not aware of.
Yeah.
You also have a great ordinance now on the books that will that alters the ability of developers to come in and do that type of reverse engineering of neighborhoods.
Yes,
Here we have typical lot sizes that are enforced, that that it's a large ordeal to get changed. And we went ahead and made sure that everyone's aware. This is where this section is. This is the single family.
That's better.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Nicholson?
I just have one, and you can clarify this for me. Karen's talking about her subdivision. Wasn't that one developer that went under and then another one came in?
Mhm.
Or is that
Most
the case?
likely, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Usually those are buybacks from banks.
Okay.
I do have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. And shame on me for not noticing when I drove by today.
Mhm.
The tree line that's there now, assuming that this moves forward and assuming apartments do get built, the apartments, the tree line's not coming down. So it would be, the apartment complex would be on the inside of the
Yes.
tree line.
Yes. I mean, again, it is, right now, the nearest apartment is 100 feet back.
From the tree line? Or
Yeah, the property line, and I bet
from
that the tree line probably is the property line. But my guess is that is hedgerow fence line trees that are growing up. That would be my assumption, that probably is where
But there's no
the property line is.
intention at the present time to do anything to those trees. Those trees are going to remain as is, to the best of your knowledge.
Unless the planning staff basically requests us to alter that somehow with some landscaping plan in order to provide better buffer. I've always been a believer that you have existing mature trees.
Keep them.
Replace them with that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Nicholson? Hearing none, should we call the roll, please?
Mrs. Butcher Conway.
No.
Mrs. Singer Ardley.
No.
Mr. Lesby.
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames.
No.
Mr. Showalter.
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Well, I came in one way and I've changed my mind again, so I'm gonna vote yes for it.
4-2.
The second reading of the annexation ordinance passes 4-3. Item B under city attorney is second reading of the zone change ordinance for the same property. If you would read that summary, please.
An ordinance changing the zoning classification of certain real property containing 59.83 acres located at or around the intersection of McClellan Circle and Lexington Road in Georgetown, Scott County, Kentucky from A1 to R2. Summary: amends the official Georgetown, Scott County zoning map to show a change in the zoning classification for certain real property consisting of 59.83 acres located at or around the intersection of McClellan Circle and Lexington Road in the city of Georgetown, Scott County, Kentucky from A1 agricultural to R2 PUD, which amendment is contingent upon the passage of the ordinance and annexing the property into the city limits, provides for severability, repeal of inconsistent ordinances, and an effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the clerk's office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324, or www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read for the first time November 12, 2018. Publicly read the second time November 26, 2018.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
Make a motion for approval, Mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
And a second. Is there any further discussion or questions on the zone change ordinance? If not, we'll call the roll.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
No.
Mr. Lesby?
Yes.
Mrs. Singer Ardley?
No.
Mrs. Butcher Conway?
No.
Thank you. The zone change ordinance passes on a vote of 4-3. Item C on your agenda is first reading of an amendment to the fence ordinance, the much-discussed fence ordinance. The ordinance that is before you that Ms. Tackett is sponsoring, I think simply clarifies without any ambiguity that the fence height we allow in Georgetown is 6 feet.
And residential zone.
In residential zones. It does not address any existing complaints about fence height or any current controversies about fence height, but going forward, our ordinance will be clear for the sign companies when they talk to our citizens.
Did you do a summary?
Yeah.
Did I send it to you?
You might have.
Hold on.
I know you have it there on your laptop.
I have it.
Hear the summary?
Mm-hmm. This right here? Is that what you want?
That's the one.
Awesome.
You can make it bigger too, if you want to, girl.
The electronic device.
An ordinance creating and amending the landscape and land use buffer ordinance. Sponsor, Councilmember Connie Tackett. 1, amend section 6.241 of the landscape and land use buffers ordinance to eliminate a conflict with another city ordinance regarding fence heights in residential zones. 2, provides for repeal of inconsistent ordinances, severability of provisions, and effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the city clerk's office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky 40324, or at www.georgetownky.gov. Introduced and publicly read for the first time November 26, 2018.
And while you were in the middle of that, we found a piece of paper that you could have had that said.
Oh,
Okay, and item D is an amendment to the annexation.
We didn't vote on it.
We didn't vote.
That's first reading.
First reading.
Oh, okay.
All right. Good enough.
Yeah, we'll have second reading and roll call vote at the next meeting. Item D on your agenda is an amendment to the annexation consent form. You'll recall that the school system was prepared to do the consent annexation forms with us, but our form had some odd language that Andrew has redone.
Lamar, you want me to read it?
Please.
An order approving a revised consent to annexation form for completion prior to providing city services beyond the city limits. Whereas on January 23, 2012, the Georgetown City Council passed Municipal Order 12006, which required completion of a consent to annexation release and restrictive covenant form prior to providing city services beyond the city limits, and whereas the city desires to make changes to that form as evidenced in the attached consent to annexation document, and whereas the city council hereby adopts said attached consent to annexation as a basic form to be used on behalf of the city for providing any city services, including water and sewer, beyond the city limits, and whereas the city shall continue to follow the established procedures for coordinating activities between city departments, city agencies, including Georgetown Municipal Water and Sewer Service, and the city with regard to obtaining properly executed consent to annexation forms and delivery of services. Now therefore, it is hereby ordered by the Georgetown City Council that no city services, including water and sewer, shall be extended or provided beyond the city limits without first obtaining a properly executed consent to annexation and filing the same with the Scott County Clerk and the Georgetown City Clerk unless otherwise approved in advance by the Georgetown City Council.
Motion, Mayor.
Thank you. Motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That carries. Item 10 on the agenda, Chief Ward, you are looking for, you want us to accept the Homeland Security grant.
Yes. Mayor, Council, it's a grant through the state Homeland Security. It's for a trench shore kit. It's for like $27,000, and it would be 100%. There's no match to it.
Motion.
So basically, we've been awarded that grant.
Second.
You get this already done.
No problem
They'll
there.
have no
No
grass
discussion there.
No discussion.
Don't even have to read it, Tracy.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I think we have a similar situation
Motion.
with the police department.
Come on up, Chief.
Come on up,
You're
Chief.
gonna get through reading it before we approve it.
I expect the same treatment.
Don't think like that.
Homeland, there is no match. It's Homeland Security for night vision equipment for our SRT.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye. No discussion.
Look, we were late getting this thing going, but we finally get it going. Okay, that gets us down to item 12 on the agenda. Council comments. Mark, Connie.
I'm good, thank you. I just want to say Happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas coming up, and I'm going to assume that we're only going to do December the 10th and not the 24th.
No, you were gone and we voted to do both meetings in December, sorry.
Well, you're going to be here all by yourself.
I'll be busy.
They said you were bringing hot chocolate.
On the 10th, I absolutely will.
24th.
Oh, I guess I only have to bring one, right?
Did you have time to find any information on the lights in the cul-de-sac in Rocky Creek?
Eddie's working on it.
Eddie's working
Okay,
on it.
okay, all right, not a problem, thank you.
That, I know we discussed that some at our 3 o'clock meeting
Good.
today, but I don't think that was the resolution.
Okay, that's fine.
Dave?
No, sir.
Marvin? Marvin getting the Santa Claus beard going pretty strong there.
It'll be long, it'll be
Real
over.
fun. Polly?
Nope.
Billy?
No.
If there's nothing else to come before the council, we will stand adjourned.